Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere cold, and not the kind of cold where you throw on an extra blanket and make some tea. I mean real cold, bone deep, soul numbing cold. We're talking Siberia. Not the Instagram version with scenic trees and silence, but the kind where silence means you're being watched and the trees are full of people who tried to escape and failed. This is what it was like to be a prisoner in Stalin's Gulag. Forget the textbook summaries and forget the sanitized documentaries with dramatic voiceovers. We're going inside the system where survival wasn't a guarantee and sanity was just a loose guideline. Before we get started, go ahead and get comfortable, dim the lights, maybe throw on some socks, the warm kind, because after this, you're never going to take warm feet for granted again. If you enjoy the kinds of things I do here, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if it feels right. And tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always interesting seeing who's out there trying to sleep to this madness. Now take a breath, settle in, this isn't going to be fast. But that's the point. We're going slow, we're going bleak, and we're going to a place where hope was contraband, the rules changed hourly, and surviving another day was the closest thing to success. You're asleep in a room that's too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, suspicious quiet. The kind of quiet that clings to the walls and makes your spine twitch. It's the early hours of some grey, unremarkable morning in 1937, and your apartment still smells faintly like boiled cabbage and yesterday's fear. You haven't done anything wrong, not exactly. But then again, no one really has. Or maybe everyone has. It's impossible to tell anymore. Suddenly there's a knock at the door. Not even a knock, really. More like a dull, deliberate pounding. Not the kind that asks permission. The kind that already knows you're going to open it. If you don't, they'll open it for you. And that usually involves splinters, screaming, and your neighbour being interviewed as a witness, whether they want to be or not. You get up. Not because you want to, but because not getting up is worse. You're still half in your thin blanket when they walk in. There's no greeting, no introduction. Just three men in long coats, boots and faces that haven't smiled since Lenin died. One of them reads your name from a piece of paper. You nod. It's the only safe response. They tell you to get dressed. You do, not quickly, not slowly, just the right amount of compliant. You ask why you're being taken in, not loudly, not angrily, just softly, like someone checking the weather before deciding on a coat. One of them says, "You'll find out." Another one rolls his eyes, like he's tired of hearing the same dumb question. None of them explain. They never do. You could be accused of anything. Anti-Soviet thoughts, incorrect associations, failure to report someone else's incorrect associations, or maybe just being the unlucky name the local factory manager scribbled down to meet his monthly quota of enemies of the people. It doesn't matter what the reason is. There probably isn't one. Not really. The reason is that reasons aren't required anymore. Suspicion is enough. Association is enough. Someone else being nervous near you once is enough. And once your name ends up on one of those pieces of paper, that's it. You belong to the machine now. You're allowed to grab your coat. Not the good one, though. That went missing last winter and probably reappeared on the shoulders of someone slightly more powerful. You grab your gloves. One of them has a hole in the palm. The other smells like kerosene. They don't let you take food, or a bag, or anything sentimental. You try to slip a photo into your pocket and get a hard stare in return. You leave it behind. Maybe it will be there when you return. Probably it won't. Probably someone will live here by next week. They take you down the stairs into a car that smells like wet wool and old cigarettes. The street outside is dark, but not empty. There's always someone watching from behind a curtain, pretending not to look. No one helps. No one asks questions. They've all seen this before, and they know how it goes. Keep your head down. Keep your mouth shut. Hope the knock doesn't come for you next. The drive doesn't take long. It never does. They don't take you to some secret facility hidden deep in the woods. They take you to the local office, the district NKVD headquarters. A concrete building with flickering lights, broken windows, and a hallway that smells like mould and sweat and dread. Inside, the walls are painted with that shade of institutional green that somehow makes everything feel colder. The chairs are metal. The floors are cracked. The guards don't look at you. Not because they're ignoring you, but because you're already beneath their interest. You're processed. That means your name is written down badly. Your coat is taken. Your shoelaces too. Anything that could be used for self-harm, or to inconvenience the guards, which they treat as the same thing. Then you're led to a cell. You weren't expecting comfort, but this is worse. It's small, maybe 6 feet across, with a concrete bench and a single light bulb that hums overhead like it's trying to remind you who's in control. You're not alone. There are already 2 men inside. One of them looks like he hasn't slept in a week. The other might be dead. You don't ask. Time slows down in the cell. Minutes become hours. Hours become irrelevant. You don't get told when things are happening. You just wait. Maybe they'll call you in for interrogation right away. Maybe they'll let you rot here for 3 days first. You have no rights. Technically, you're still a citizen of the glorious Soviet Union. In practice, you're a problem to be solved. Eventually they come for you. 2 guards. No expression, no words, just a nod and a shove. You're led down another hallway. This one is darker. There's a door at the end. You go inside. It's not a courtroom. It's an office. There's a desk, a man behind it, a typewriter, a file with your name on it, probably written by someone who's never met you. The man looks bored. He reads off charges. You recognise some of the words: sabotage, counter-revolutionary activity, espionage, anti-Soviet propaganda. Some of them sound like they were pulled from a hat. You start to object. He holds up a hand. You stop. The trial already happened. The verdict was already written. This part is just ceremony. He asks you to confess. You say no. He raises an eyebrow like he was hoping you'd say that. The file closes. You're escorted out, back to the cell. Later, maybe that night, maybe the next, they try again. This time in a different room. This one has no windows. It does have a chair bolted to the floor, and a man with a cigarette who smells like sweat and gasoline. He doesn't ask questions right away. He stares. He waits. Then he starts talking. He already knows you're guilty, he says. It's just a matter of how much you're willing to say. He reminds you of what they did to your old school friend, the one who got arrested last year and hasn't been seen since. He says things can go easier for you if you're cooperative. He says you can make this quick, or you can make it painful. You still say no. So he shows you what painful means. They don't use fancy tools, just fists, belts, maybe a rubber club. Sometimes they deprive you of sleep for days. Sometimes they keep you in a stress position until your joints feel like they've melted. Sometimes they let the cell get so cold you can see your breath, and then drag you into a room with a hot lamp and shout at you until your body forgets what temperature is supposed to feel like. Eventually, you confess. Not because you're guilty, but because your brain stops caring. Because the idea of another day without sleep is worse than signing a lie. You admit to conspiring, to planning, to hating. You name people you barely know. You say you heard someone make a joke about the party. You say whatever they want you to say. Because that's the only way it ends. The man at the desk types it up. Your confession becomes your record. Your record becomes your sentence. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 25. Sometimes it just says, without right of correspondence, which is a polite way of saying no one will ever hear from you again. Your train leaves at dawn. They give you back your coat, the torn one. They don't return your gloves. They give you a metal tag with a number on it. That number is now more important than your name. They march you out to a truck. There are others. Men, women, some barely old enough to shave. You don't speak to them. Not yet. There's still too much uncertainty. Too much fear. The truck takes you to the station. It's not the main station. It's the side one, the hidden one, where the cattle cars sit waiting. There's no sign, no platform, no schedule. Just boxcars with iron bars welded over the windows, and guards with rifles and nerves as frayed as your clothes. You're shoved inside. It's already crowded. There's no heat, no light, just the stink of bodies and a bucket in the corner that already smells like someone missed. And that's how it begins. Your journey, not to a prison, not even to a labour camp, but to the Gulag, an entire universe of punishment stretched across a continent. A place where freedom is a joke and time doesn't heal anything. A place where survival is something you earn one frozen breath at a time. You're not even in Siberia yet, and you already miss the cell. You're not sure how long the train has been moving. Days, maybe. Could be a week. Could be a month. There's no clock, no announcements, and no daylight you can trust. Just a vague cycle of cold, slightly less cold, and someone opening the boxcar door long enough to toss in a loaf of bread and let out the steam of 80 unwashed prisoners sharing one toilet bucket. The bread is never enough. The water's usually frozen. You sleep upright, knees tucked into your chest, back against someone else's shoulder who's too tired to complain. If you're lucky, they don't have lice. If you're not lucky, you'll find out tomorrow. Eventually the train stops. There's no station, no crowd, no platform with welcome signs. Just snow, more snow, and a set of guard towers in the distance that look like someone tried to build a fence around the edge of the earth. The guards bark orders, not specific ones, just generic shouting that's meant to trigger movement. You climb down from the car. Your legs ache from being still too long. Your feet don't feel like they belong to you anymore. The cold is sharp, immediate. There's no such thing as getting used to it. They herd you toward a building. This is where it starts, officially on paper. You're about to be entered into the system. Not as a person, as a unit. As a number that now exists on file, ready to be referenced, misfiled, or quietly erased. The building is made of grey concrete and the kind of Soviet optimism that's already peeling off the walls. Inside, the heat is just enough to remind you what warmth used to feel like. Not enough to enjoy, just enough to miss when it's gone again. They separate you into lines. Male, female. Children, if there are any, get processed separately. You can hear crying down the hall. Not loud crying, just the kind that seeps into the corners like smoke. The kind that no one talks about. The paperwork begins. It's not complicated. They don't need much from you. Your name, which they'll spell wrong anyway. Your supposed crime, which you may or may not have confessed to under physical persuasion. Your origin, which no longer matters. Your family, who will likely never know where you've gone. You try to answer calmly. The clerk in front of you is tired. Not sympathetic tired, just bored. Like he spent the last 4 years watching people disappear behind the same desk. And you're just one more pair of cheekbones on the assembly line. He doesn't look up when you speak. He stamps something, hands you a card. It's flimsy, damp, and already smudged. It has your prisoner's number on it. That's you now. That number. Get used to it. You'll be repeating it a lot. Next, they take your fingerprints, your coat, your shoes. You'll get replacements later. Probably. Something previously owned by someone who didn't survive the last winter. The clothes are piled high in the next room. If you're lucky, you'll find something close to your size. If not, you'll walk around with sleeves dragging in the mud and trousers that cut off at the shin. It doesn't matter. You're not dressing for fashion anymore. You're dressing for exposure survival. Then comes the medical exam. Don't get excited. It's not designed to help you. It's designed to categorize you. Fit for labour, unfit, marginal. Those are the only 3 groups that exist now. If you're sick, they don't treat you. They just make a note of it. If you're dying, they move you to a different column. If you're healthy, or look like you might be healthy, they push you through the door, labelled processing complete. It's the closest thing to a green light you'll get for the rest of your stay, but we're not done yet. Not even close. You're marched down a hallway. There are doors, each one with a plaque. Some say interrogation, others say evaluation. Most don't say anything. The guards pick one. They push you inside. There's a desk, a chair, a man in uniform who doesn't look up, another man who does. He tells you to sit. You sit. What follows isn't exactly a conversation. It's a formality with bruises. They already know everything they need, or think they do. Your job is to answer questions that may or may not be real. They ask if you know why you're here. You say no, they nod, like that was expected. They ask if you still hold anti-Soviet thoughts. You say no. They ask again. This time they lean in. You say no again. They slap you. Not hard, just enough to let you know this is the easy version of the conversation. This goes on for hours, maybe days. The questions repeat. The slaps get harder. The chair suddenly has no backrest. Then no seat. Then no breaks between sessions. If you cry, they mock you. If you get angry, they get creative. Sleep is rare. Meals are sparse. The goal isn't to get information. It's to break you into something that stops resisting. Eventually, most people cooperate. Not because they change their mind. Just because the process has sanded off anything that once resembled resistance. Once that's over, you're sent back to a holding room. It's darker this time. Packed. Cold again. No one talks, not out loud. Conversations happen with glances, with a slight shuffle of boots, with the occasional gesture that might mean, I was a professor once, or I used to be a father, or I won't make it through next week. No one says those things, but they're there. At some point, they bring in the forms. You get handed a slip with your name, your number, your destination. It's coded, but not secret. Anyone who's been here long enough knows what it means. There's a section number. That's the camp. There's a category. That's the work detail. If you're lucky, it says forestry. If you're unlucky, it says mining. If you're really unlucky, it says construction, which is a polite way of saying digging until your fingers bleed. You're told to memorize the number, not because it's important to you, but because the guards don't care to remember your name, and shouting, "Hey you!" loses impact after the 500th prisoner. Now comes the orientation speech. It's short, delivered by a man with a voice like gravel, and a face like it's been through 5 winters without a scarf. He tells you the rules, not all of them, just the ones that matter. No talking without permission, no resistance, no complaints, no arguments about food, about work, about sleeping arrangements, no asking where your family is, no questions about where you are, and definitely no questions about when you're leaving. The answer is never, unless someone important changes their mind or forgets you exist, which, to be fair, is likely. He tells you what happens if you break the rules. You already know. You've seen the bruises. You've heard the screams. But now you get to hear the polite version. Violators will be punished. Repeat offenders will be reassigned. Chronic offenders will be dealt with. The words are bland, bureaucratic, like someone reciting parking policy. But you understand the meaning. There's a form on the wall. It shows a chart, productivity targets. If you meet them, you eat. If you exceed them, you might get extra bread. If you fail, you're punished. Not dramatically, just in ways that hurt. Less food, harder work, worse sleeping conditions. It's a system designed for simple math. Suffer more, work harder, maybe survive. At this point, you've been awake too long. Your hands shake. Your feet are swollen. Your stomach feels like a burnt-out candle. You want to lie down. You don't ask. That's another rule. Don't ask. Just wait until it's allowed. Eventually, a door opens. You're herded out again. More guards, more shouting. This time it's not to a holding room. It's to a truck. Or a sleigh. Or whatever rusty, frozen transport is available today. There's a work site waiting. Somewhere in the distance. Past the trees. Past the last radio tower. Past anything resembling a map. And as you climb in, your fingers numb, your breath visible, your body still registering the last slap across the face, like it happened 5 minutes ago, you realise something. You're not even in the camp yet. This was just check-in. There's a common myth among new prisoners. It goes something like this. If you can just get a fair trial, everything will be sorted out. A chance to speak, to explain, to remind the authorities that this is all just a big misunderstanding. You were loyal. You followed orders. You didn't criticise the party. You didn't even have opinions, really. Maybe you once muttered something about the food being bad. Maybe you knew someone who used to read books that are now on the banned list. But that can't possibly be enough to send a person to prison. Right? It can. It absolutely is. And your trial is not here to examine that mistake. It's here to rubber stamp it. You don't get a lawyer. That's not how it works. You might get someone with a title that implies legal assistance, but they're not there to defend you. They're there to confirm things. Their job is to nod at the appropriate time and maybe remind you to sign the confession that was beaten out of you 3 nights ago when you forgot the exact date your neighbour supposedly made an anti-Soviet joke in the bread line. You're brought into the room. It's not a courtroom. Not in the sense you imagined. No wooden panels, no judge's bench, no audience full of family and anxious glances. Just a desk, a chair, 2 or 3 men in uniform, and you, standing because you weren't invited to sit. There's no jury. That part was phased out when it started getting in the way. There's no real presentation of evidence. Maybe there's a folder. Maybe they open it. Maybe it's mostly blank. What matters is that it has your name on it, and that the decision was made before the ink even dried on the cover. They begin reading, not to you, at you. The charges are vague and familiar at the same time. Article 58, the favourite. Anti-Soviet agitation. Enemy of the people. Collaboration with foreign intelligence. Note, they don't say what kind of intelligence. Just the kind that threatens the Soviet state. Possession of counter-revolutionary literature, which could mean anything from a foreign newspaper to a torn page from a banned novel you didn't even know was banned. They ask if you have anything to say. This is your moment. This is where, in a just world, you'd plead your case. Tell them about your job, your family, your spotless record, the time you donated to the local party drive, the loyalty, the hard work, the total lack of anything resembling treason. You start talking, not too fast, not too emotional. You've seen what happens to people who get angry. The men behind the desk stare. One of them scribbles something, another stares out the window. They're not listening. They're waiting for you to stop. When you do, there's a pause, and then someone says, "You're clearly not taking this seriously." That's the end of your defence. You're asked to sign. The confession is already typed. It has your name, the date, a description of the crimes you didn't commit. You're told it's better if you sign, faster, cleaner. Otherwise, things might get extended. No explanation of what that means. You already know. You stare at the page. The words blur. You see phrases you don't understand. Organisations you've never heard of. A signature space at the bottom, like the punchline to a joke where the joke is your life. You hesitate, they notice. A guard steps closer. You sign. The decision is read. You are sentenced to 10 years of corrective labour. Maybe it's 15. Maybe it's 10 plus 5, which means 10 years in the camp. 5 more years of exile after that. If they're in a generous mood, they'll mention the possibility of early release for exemplary behaviour. But you can tell by the tone that no one actually expects that to happen. It's there like seasoning, a dash of hope to make the sentence go down smoother. They tell you that this is a gift from the state, rehabilitation through labour, re-education through effort. They speak like you've been given an opportunity, a chance to purify yourself by shoveling snow until your spine bends or digging holes for projects no one will explain. It's for your own good, really. You're lucky to be alive. They remind you of that part more than once. There's no appeal. Not because you can't file one, but because nothing happens if you do. Sometimes the paperwork just disappears. Sometimes it's used to wrap lunch. Sometimes they reject it and send it back with a note saying your complaint was unfounded and ideologically misaligned. That's the end of your trial. The guards return. They tell you to stand. You do. The chair you never sat in is pushed aside as you're escorted back to the hallway. One of them mutters something about people like you. He doesn't say it to you, just out loud, like a habit, like a reminder that even if you were innocent, and they all know you probably were, you're not the kind of person anyone's going to risk their job defending. Back in the holding cell, someone asks you how it went. You shrug, They nod. That's how it always goes. You sit. You wait. You think about how your sentence ends in a decade. Then you remember that no one makes it 10 years without losing something. A finger to frostbite. A lung to pneumonia. A piece of yourself to the silence that never ends, even when people are screaming. Some people don't even get trials. You learn that quickly. Some get what's called an extrajudicial decision. Just a piece of paper that says approved. Sometimes it says re-education. Sometimes it says execution. You're considered one of the lucky ones. Eventually, someone calls your number again, not your name. That stopped a while ago. Just the number. It's time to be transferred. Your paperwork is done. Your sentence is official. Your future is frozen and pre-packaged. You're marched outside with others. The same others. Always new faces, but always the same expressions. Blank, tight, exhausted in a way that no sleep can fix. There's a list. There's a count. They compare faces to photos, like the human part is just a checklist. You're given back a bundle of items, if you're lucky. A coat, a scarf, maybe a pair of mittens made from whatever material was lying around the last time someone died. No one asks if it fits. They pack you into another truck. This one smells worse, like rust and wet wood and fear. You're not told where you're going. You never are. The guards know, but they don't tell. Or maybe they don't know either. Maybe they're just another layer in the chain of blind obedience that keeps everything moving. The road is rough. Your spine becomes familiar with every bump. Snow comes in through cracks in the frame. Your feet start going numb again. Someone tries to ask how far it is. The guard ignores him. Someone else says nothing, just wraps his arms tighter around his knees and hums quietly under his breath, or like he's trying to remember what music used to sound like. You don't sleep. Not properly. Just close your eyes and drift into the kind of rest that doesn't help. At some point, the truck stops. You step out. The cold punches you in the chest like it's personal. The sky is grey, the trees are skeletal. The horizon is just white, stretching out forever. In the distance, you can see buildings. Low, wooden structures surrounded by barbed wire and watchtowers. Smoke rises from one corner. Not the comforting kind, the other kind. This is your camp, your new address, your future. No more waiting. No more pretending. You're here, and the work starts tomorrow. You're herded back into the truck. No one speaks. There's nothing left to say. The wheels crunch over frozen dirt as it pulls away from the courthouse, or the barracks, or wherever you were just processed. You don't know. It's all one long hallway with locked doors. No signs, no maps, no explanations. You're not supposed to know where you are. You're not supposed to know where you're going. You just go. The truck rattles for what feels like hours. Your knees ache from holding yourself steady. There are no seats, just a metal floor that gets colder the longer you sit on it. Every now and then, someone tries to lean against the wall, only to jerk back from the bite of the metal. No one wants frostbite before they've even reached the station. Eventually the truck stops, doors open, orders are barked, you climb out into another grey morning. Maybe it's evening. It's hard to tell anymore. The sky looks the same whether the sun's rising or setting, blank and indifferent. You're on the edge of a rail yard now. No passengers in sight, no bustling station staff. Just a long row of boxcars, the kind they used for livestock. Now they use them for you. The cars are steel, riveted, and lined up like coffins on wheels. The kind of train that doesn't show up on public schedules. It doesn't go to tourist towns. It doesn't stop for photographs. This isn't the kind of train you wave goodbye to. No one's waving. Most people won't even admit it exists. You're not alone. Dozens of others are here too, all with the same dull look in their eyes. Nobody asks questions anymore. They already know the rules. Asking gets you attention. Attention gets you pain. So everyone just stands, waiting to be loaded like crates. A guard opens the nearest car. The door slides back with a groan. Inside, it's dark and already smells wrong. Sour breath, damp cloth. Fear. No seats, no heat, no light. Just wooden slats on the floor and a bucket in the corner. If you're lucky, it was recently emptied. If not, well, welcome to the next few weeks of your life. You're shoved inside. People crowd in, back to back, shoulder to shoulder. You try to find a spot against the wall. Not because it's warmer, it's not. But because being in the middle means you'll be standing the entire time. You press yourself into the corner and try not to think about the fact that there's no bathroom, no food, no air circulation. Just whatever oxygen manages to seep through a tiny barred window and the cracks in the sliding door. The door slams shut. The bolt locks. Darkness falls like a punch. Someone coughs. Someone else starts whispering prayers. Nobody tells them to stop. The train jerks. Movement begins. Slowly at first, then faster. The floor vibrates beneath your boots, and the walls groan with the weight of misery. No one knows where this one's headed. Could be Vorkuta. Could be Kolyma. Could be a frozen forest 3 time zones away. You don't get an itinerary. You don't get a destination ticket. You get motion and cold and silence. Time melts. The days stop meaning anything. You sleep in shifts, if you can call it sleep. Most people just pass out from exhaustion, then wake up numb and stiff and slightly more hopeless than before. Every few hours, or maybe every few days, it's impossible to tell, the train stops. Guards open the door. They throw in bread, usually stale, sometimes mouldy, always not enough. They hand in a water bucket. It's icy. The bottom is already frozen. You drink anyway, because you don't know when the next one's coming. Then the door slams again, and the darkness returns. You try not to think about what's happening to your body. The cramps, the swelling in your ankles, the way your breath hangs in the air like smoke. Some men stop moving after a few days. They just slump over. The others shift their weight to make room. No one asks if they're asleep. If they're lucky, they are. If not, someone quietly checks their pulse and says nothing. There's no ceremony. No weeping. You just keep going. The bucket in the corner fills, then it overflows. The smell gets worse. You wrap a scarf around your mouth, not because it helps, but because doing something feels better than doing nothing. The floor grows slick. You pray for cold just to keep the rot from spreading faster. Someone talks in their sleep, cries out a name, probably a wife, a daughter, a brother. They don't wake up after. Nobody does. It's easier not to. When the train stops for longer than usual, everyone looks at each other. Not with hope, with dread. A long stop means you're almost there. And there is never good. The door opens. Bright light stabs your eyes. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the usual cold. Worse. This is the kind of cold that takes your breath and keeps it. That seeps into your bones like you left the door open on purpose. Guards bark orders. You stand up, knees screaming, back locking. You shuffle out into snow that feels like it was designed to break people. Your boots sink. Your feet are already wet. You line up. You wait. In the distance, you see it. The camp. Barbed wire fences. Watchtowers. Smoke from the chimneys. Wooden buildings lined up like gravestones, low and colourless. Nothing moves inside the compound. No voices. No activity. Just stillness. You're told to march. It's not far. Just long enough to feel like a punishment. The snow makes walking hard. Some people fall. No one helps them up. The guards shout. Eventually everyone keeps moving. You pass a sign. It's in Russian. A slogan. Something about labour being honourable. You don't laugh. You don't scoff. You don't react at all. That's another rule. Don't react to anything. Inside the gate, there's another lineup. Papers are checked. Names are mispronounced. Numbers are repeated. You give your number. You try not to shiver. A man in a long coat ticks a box. You're directed to one of the barracks. Block 17, or 12, or 6. It doesn't matter. They all look the same. You're shown to a bunk. Not shown exactly. Just pushed toward it. It's wood. No mattress. Just planks. Maybe a burlap sack full of straw if you're lucky. You share it with someone else. Maybe 2 people. You don't get to choose. There's no blanket. Just your coat and whatever heat your cellmates' bodies produce. You lie down. You don't sleep. You just close your eyes and listen to the wind howling through cracks in the walls. Later you hear a bell, or maybe it's a siren. It means roll call, or food, or punishment. It means something, and you'll figure it out soon enough. You get up. You go where they tell you. The real work hasn't even started yet, but it will. And you'll do it, because not doing it is worse. You'll wake up each day not knowing if it's been 3 months or 3 years. You'll lose track of time, of language, of everything but the cold. You'll remember the train, the smell, the silence, the darkness, but mostly the sound the door made when it closed. Because it didn't sound like a door, it sounded like a decision. You're standing in the snow, boots sinking deeper by the second, fingers stinging even through your gloves, if you still have gloves. Some didn't make it this far with theirs. Some didn't make it this far at all. The air doesn't feel like air. It feels like punishment. A kind of sharp, invisible force that pushes through your coat, your skin, your ribs. Every breath burns. Every second outside makes you wonder how long the human body can go before the cold wins. The guards don't give you time to think about it. Orders are shouted. People move, slowly, stiffly. You follow. There's no trail. Just packed snow and muddy footprints leading toward the main compound. You can see the camp better now. It's bigger than you expected, but also smaller. Not in size, in feeling. It's hard to describe. Like the space inside the fences is somehow denser than everything outside of it. Like the air stops moving once it crosses the threshold. The watchtowers loom above the fence line. You catch a glimpse of movement. A figure holding a rifle pacing slowly. There's no snow up there. It's been cleared. Someone had that job already this morning. The barrel of the rifle doesn't move, but you feel its presence anyway. You could be anyone. A farmer, a teacher, a soldier who once stood in a tower like that. Doesn't matter now. Now you're just a shape in the yard. The gate is made of thick wood and steel wire. It opens with a slow, mechanical groan. Inside, everything is grey. Not just the buildings, the sky, the ground, the uniforms, the people. Even the sound feels grey, quiet in a way that isn't peaceful, just hollow. Like, noise doesn't want to live here, either. They march you to the central building. You pass rows of barracks, long wooden structures, uneven and patched with tar paper and rotting boards. Some windows are missing. Others are covered with dirty cloth or warped plastic. Smoke drifts from chimneys, but it doesn't smell like warmth. It smells like wet firewood and desperation. You're taken into a processing room. It's warmer inside, but not much. A desk, a few metal chairs, a clock on the wall stopped at a time that probably hasn't meant anything in years. A man behind the desk waves you forward. You give him your number. He nods, writes something in a logbook, then points to another guard, who's already tired of seeing people like you. You're given a bundle. It's not a uniform. Not exactly. Just a mismatched collection of clothes that might once have been whole. A heavy coat with holes at both elbows. Wool trousers 2 sizes too big. A hat that smells like gasoline and mildew. Underwear, if you're lucky. Socks, probably not. You're told to change. Right there. In the corner. Privacy isn't a feature here. Modesty doesn't belong in the inventory. You strip down to your skin, which is already raw from the cold, and rubbing against the inside of a train car. You try not to think about the fact that your old clothes are being scooped up and tossed into a pile without ceremony. You won't be needing them again. Someone else might. The coat you're handed has initials scratched into the lining. Not yours, someone else's. The fabric is stiff with age and dried sweat. The smell is baked into the seams. You don't ask what happened to the original owner. Dressed and re-tagged, you're moved again. Another building, another line. You stand outside for what feels like hours. Snow falls, light and slow, like even the weather is too tired to put in effort. You shift from foot to foot, trying to keep feeling in your toes. Someone near you starts coughing. They don't stop. No one asks if they're okay. Eventually, you're allowed inside the barracks. It's dark. The windows are dirty and small. There's a single stove in the centre of the room. A metal drum with a pipe leading out the roof. It's lit, barely. The heat doesn't reach the corners. You can see your breath. You can smell dozens of lives condensed into one tight, cramped space. Unwashed skin, wet wool, feet, smoke, and the faint tang of illness. Bunks line the walls. Top and bottom stacked like crates. Each one the size of a coffin with worse bedding. Just wooden boards and a blanket that looks like it used to be part of a tent. You're assigned a spot. Bottom row near the door. Draft central. Someone already lies on the bunk above you, staring blankly at the ceiling. You nod. They don't respond. There's no personal space here. No storage. Your belongings, if you have any, go under the bunk or inside your coat. Theft is common. Trust is rare. Everything of value is hidden, hoarded, or gone. The smart ones sleep with their boots on. The smarter ones hide them under their heads. You're told when to show up for roll call, when to wake up, when to sleep, though no one really sleeps. Just lays still and tries not to think about anything. The stove goes out sometime around midnight. If you're lucky, the person closest to it managed to keep it alive with a few splinters. If not, you spend the rest of the night curled in a ball, listening to people shiver and mutter in their dreams. The guards patrol outside. You hear the crunch of boots in the snow every couple of hours. No one tries to escape. Not because of the fences, though they're real, but because beyond the fence is just more snow. Miles of it. Forest, wolves, temperatures that kill faster than bullets. You wouldn't get far. You probably wouldn't get a mile. Your first meal comes in the morning, if you can call it that. You line up outside the mess hut, bowl in hand, metal if you're lucky, chipped enamel if you're not. They ladle out a grey liquid that might have been soup once. Cabbage maybe. Something that used to resemble potatoes. You eat fast, standing up. The cold doesn't wait, and neither do the guards. There's bread if supplies allow. It's hard, dense, and tastes like dust. But it fills your stomach. That's the goal. Nutrition is a rumour. Survival is the only metric that matters. After the meal, you're sorted into work details. You're not asked what you're good at. You're not asked if you have back problems, or asthma, or a bad leg. You're told to go where the clipboard says: timber cutting, road building, ore mining, gravel hauling, doesn't matter. If you can move, you can work. If you can't, you'll be reassigned to something worse. Maybe the punishment detail. Maybe the pit. No one explains the rules. You learn by watching. Speaking out of turn earns you a beating. Slacking earns you extra shifts. Refusing work earns you the punishment cell, a windowless box where the temperature drops below freezing at night and no one brings you food. You see your first punishment cell before noon. A man from your bunk refused to leave. Said his foot was broken. He was limping. Hard to fake that in the snow. They didn't care. 2 guards dragged him by the arms, his legs trailing behind like bags of wet cement. The door slammed shut. No one talked about it. You get through the first day on adrenaline and confusion. You don't remember what you did. Something with shovels. Moving snow from one place to another. It didn't make sense. It wasn't supposed to. You did it anyway, because the man next to you whispered, "Don't ask questions, just copy them." Your arms ache, your shoulders burn, your breath comes in clouds. The cold is everywhere, not just outside. It's in your bones now, in your spine. You can feel it behind your eyes. At the end of the shift, you're marched back to the barracks. No one talks, no one has energy. Dinner is more soup, this time thinner. A piece of bread if you're lucky. You eat it before you sit down. Because if you don't, someone might take it. You lie in your bunk again. Same wooden board, same rag of a blanket. Same stranger above you who hasn't spoken in 3 days. Your muscles twitch. Your hands are cracked. You can't remember your last full night of sleep. You don't cry. Not because you're strong. Because your body's too tired. Outside, the wind howls. Tomorrow you wake up and do it again, and no one will remember your name. You wake up before the bell. Not because you're well rested, but because no one really sleeps here. You drift in and out, trapped between cold and discomfort, with your eyes shut and your mind floating somewhere above your bunk. When you do open them, it's still dark, but not the same kind of dark from the train. That was empty. This one is thick, full of shallow breathing and the creak of old wood shifting under exhausted bodies. The smell hits you first. It's not sharp, not obvious, just heavy, like something slow rotting in a sealed room. You lie still for a second and try to identify the layers. Wet wool, feet, sweat, but the kind that's gone stale. There's also the scent of smoke, not wood smoke, but damp, choked stove smoke from a fire that can't make up its mind. Somewhere beneath it all is a faint trace of urine. You stop trying to figure out whose. The stove in the middle of the room is dead. Someone was supposed to stoke it during the night. Either they didn't, or they did, and the fuel ran out. It doesn't matter. The air in the barracks is just a few degrees warmer than the air outside, and that's only because bodies give off heat. You sit up slowly. Everything hurts. Your back is stiff from the plank you slept on. Your neck is tight. Your hands feel swollen. You swing your legs off the bunk, and your feet hit the floor, wooden, cracked, and damp. Cold shoots up your calves like it's looking for something to destroy. Someone across the room coughs. A wet, hacking sound that rattles too long to be ignored. No one reacts. It's just part of the soundtrack now. The barracks aren't large, but they feel crowded. Rows of bunks pushed together so tightly you have to turn sideways to pass between them. Each one is the same. 2 or 3 people to a bunk, depending on how bad the last shipment was. No bedding. Just whatever layers you've got on your body and a shared blanket that smells like it was last washed when the Tsar still had a throne. The walls are wood, but barely. You can see daylight through the cracks. Cloth is stuffed into the gaps. Old socks, sleeves, maybe a piece of a shirt someone couldn't wear anymore. The windows are clouded with grime. Some have plastic nailed over them to keep out the wind. Others are broken completely, left open to whatever the sky decides to drop that day. The floor near the door is warped from years of boots tracking in snow, mud, and whatever else clings to the souls of suffering. The far corner has a bucket for waste. It's emptied once a day, usually. If someone forgets or refuses, the smell becomes unbearable by morning. You learn quickly not to be the one assigned to that task. There are bugs. You didn't notice them right away. Maybe you were too distracted. Maybe they were waiting. But now they're part of the routine. Lice, mostly. Fleas, sometimes. Bed bugs, if you're lucky enough to have a mattress. Which you don't. You itch constantly. You scratch until your skin breaks. The bites scab over, then open again. You start to recognise the patterns. Neck, ankles, wrists. Places where your coat gaps. Some prisoners strip naked once a week and try to steam their clothes over the stove when there's firewood. Not to clean them, no one has soap. Just to kill the lice. It works barely. You tried it once. Held your coat over a pot of boiling water until the walls stank and your fingers burned. It helped. For a day, there's a shelf near the front of the barracks. Not for storage, for names. A list of prisoners assigned to this building. Most of the names are scratched out, some replaced, some just crossed out and never filled in again. You try not to look at it. You'll be on it soon enough. There's no privacy, none. You dress in front of everyone. You undress, if you ever get clean clothes, in front of everyone. You relieve yourself into the bucket next to someone trying to sleep. You cough blood, and someone rolls over to give you more room. Conversations, when they happen, are quiet. Short. No one says more than they need to. Sometimes someone tells a story about a city or a family or something that happened before. But most people stay silent. Language dries out here. Vocabulary shrinks to the bare minimum. Cold, hungry, tired, guard, food, work, stop. The guards don't enter the barracks unless something goes wrong. A fight, a theft, an escape attempt, which really just means someone walked toward the fence slowly and hoped the snow would kill them faster than the bullets. When the guards do come in, everyone stands. You don't speak unless spoken to. You keep your hands in view. You don't make jokes. You don't ask questions. Occasionally someone new is dragged in after dark, thrown onto a bunk, coat half torn, eyes wide and useless. You give them space. They'll learn the rules soon enough. Or they won't. Either way, you keep your head down. You're told to keep the barracks clean. Not for comfort, for order. Every morning, someone sweeps the floor, with a brush missing half its bristles. Someone else checks the windows for frost damage. Someone scrubs the waste bucket. It doesn't make the place better, just slightly less unbearable. There's a rhythm to everything. Not a schedule exactly. Schedules imply choice. Just a sequence of events that repeat until you forget what day it is. Wake up, shiver, stand in line, eat, march, work, return, eat, shiver again, try to sleep, wake up. Sometimes, in the small hours of the night, you hear someone muttering. Not loud, not coherent, just broken words. Names, memories, arguments they're still having with people who probably disappeared 2 years ago. You pretend not to hear. Everyone pretends. There's no space for other people's breakdowns. You're barely holding on to your own. You try to keep your boots dry. That's the only rule anyone agrees on. Wet boots mean frostbite. Frostbite means amputation. Amputation means no work. No work means punishment. Or worse, you don't want to be reassigned to the sick barracks. No one comes back from there. There's a man in the bunk next to yours who hums, low, rhythmic, every morning while he laces his boots. No one tells him to stop. It's not pleasant, but it's better than the silence. You've started listening for it. Not because it's comforting, just because it means you're still here. The barracks don't change. Even when the seasons shift, everything stays the same. In winter, the walls freeze. In spring, they leak. In summer, the bugs double. The air thickens. The sweat makes the wood stink worse. But the routine holds. Same plank, same blanket, same corner to store your hat. You hold on to these things. Because when everything else is stripped away, the routine is all that's left. You don't decorate. You don't personalise. You don't leave marks on the walls or scratch your name into the wood. That's the kind of thing the guards notice. And once they notice you, you're in trouble. No one wants to stand out. Even in misery, blending in is a form of safety. At some point, you stop hoping the stove will be warm in the morning. You stop checking for lice before bed. You stop cleaning the scabs on your ankles. These aren't problems anymore. They're just parts of the room, like the splinters in the floor or the draft from the door that never shuts all the way. Eventually, the barracks stop being a place. They just become a condition. You don't live in them. You endure them. And when you're marched out to the worksite tomorrow morning, already exhausted, already aching, you won't look back, because there's nothing back there to miss. Your first real look at what passes for clothing out here comes during morning roll call. You're standing in formation with 100 other prisoners, all hunched against the wind, all wearing what looks like the leftover scraps from a war no one won. Nothing matches, nothing fits. It's like someone dumped a pile of laundry from 3 different decades, dragged it through a swamp, and then handed it out based on how cold you looked. There are no official uniforms. Not in the sense you'd expect. No neat rows of identical jumpsuits. No clean sets issued from storage. What you get is a pile, literally. When you arrive at the distribution shed, a guard points to it. That's the wardrobe. Formerly occupied, often recently vacated. Nothing is new, everything has a story. Most of the stories end in frostbite or dysentery. They call your name, or your number, more likely, and toss you a bundle. A coat, trousers, maybe a scarf if there was an extra. There's no sorting by size. If the sleeves are too long, roll them. If the pants fall down, tie them with rope. If the coat has holes, sew them shut, assuming you can find a needle. More likely, you'll just layer something underneath and hope for the best. The coat you're given smells like it belonged to someone who spent 3 months dyeing in it. It's stiff in places, shredded at the cuffs, and still has someone else's initials stitched into the collar. You think about removing them. You don't. You'll be lucky if this coat lasts a month. It probably won't. Your boots are worse. Leather, technically. Cracked, brittle, warped out of shape. The left one is missing part of the sole. The right one has a hole near the toe where the cold whispers through every time you take a step. There are no replacements. There are no extras. If your boots fail, you stuff them with rags. If you don't have rags, you use newspaper. If you don't have newspaper, you wrap your feet in straw and pray the guards don't notice. You look around. Everyone's in the same condition. Some coats are patched with fabric that clearly came from curtains. Some hats are just bundles of cloth tied with twine. One man is wearing gloves made from old socks with the toes cut out. Another has wrapped his feet in strips of burlap, held together with frozen string. There's no standard, just layers. The more you can wear, the better. Not because it keeps you warm, but because it keeps your skin intact. Undergarments are a luxury. You might have 1 pair. Maybe. Washed once a week if you're disciplined. More often if you're desperate and have access to hot water, which almost never happens. Shirts are threadbare. Trousers are often patched with pieces of someone else's shirt. The seams are rough. The buttons never match. Zippers are rare. Safety pins are gold. There's a man in your barrack who used to be a tailor. He sews for cigarettes, repairs torn sleeves, reinforces knees with whatever he can find, mostly canvas from old sacks. His work is decent, but he's exhausted. One of his fingers is black from frostbite. No one asks if he's going to lose it. He already knows. The guards, on the other hand, are dressed like they live in a different climate. Thick wool coats, lined gloves, fur hats with intact ear flaps. Boots that actually fit. You can hear the confidence in their stride, the way the soles don't slip on the ice. They carry rifles and shout orders, barely blinking while you shiver in clothes that weren't even warm when they were new. You notice how the guards stand near the fire barrels, rotating positions to stay warm. Meanwhile, the prisoners stand motionless in the wind, waiting to be counted. If you move too much, you're accused of fidgeting. If you try to hide from the wind, you're told to face the motherland. Whatever that means today, there's a black market, unofficial of course, deals made in whispers in corners, a pair of mittens traded for extra bread, a wool scarf swapped for a favour at the infirmary. Socks, actual matching socks, are like currency. No one knows where they come from. No one asks. If you have extras, you guard them like gold. Once in a while, a supply truck shows up. It rarely brings clothes. Usually just tools and whatever food substitute they have scraped together this week. But sometimes, if someone important is visiting, the guards distribute emergency winter gear. Not to everyone, just a few. The newer prisoners, the younger ones, the ones who still look alive enough to matter. You learn not to expect your name on that list. The cold makes everything worse. Wool turns to sandpaper. Canvas stiffens like cardboard. Anything wet freezes within minutes. Socks, gloves, your breath on the inside of your scarf. You learn to brush off snow before it melts. You learn to dry your boots by placing them under your blanket at night, which means sleeping in damp socks, but it's a trade you get used to. Washing your clothes is another ordeal. There's no laundry room, no detergent, no basin, just a bucket, some melted snow if you're lucky, and a bar of soap that smells like chemicals and burns your skin. You scrub with your hands until your knuckles split. Then you hang the clothes over your bunk, hoping they dry by morning. They don't, they freeze. You wake up to sleeves stiff as planks, pants that crack when you move them. Eventually you stop washing. You just beat the lice out of your coat every morning with a stick. Not to kill them, just to convince them to relocate temporarily. Your shirt sticks to your skin from sweat and grime. You stop noticing the smell. It's easier that way. Some prisoners have a ritual. They rotate their clothing. Not to keep anything clean, that's impossible, but to manage wear. Monday, the patched trousers. Tuesday, the ones with the ripped knee. Wednesday, the pair that doesn't fall down as fast. It's less about comfort and more about survival. Don't let anything tear too far. Don't let the holes get too big. Don't let the guards notice you limping. Your hat becomes your most important possession. It covers your ears, hides your eyes, gives you an excuse not to make eye contact. If you lose it, you'll feel the cold in your teeth. You'll hear it in your skull. You'll learn how quickly exposed skin turns white, then purple, then black. You'll stop feeling your nose first, then your lips, then your jaw. No one trades hats. That's the line. You can steal bread, argue over boots, fight someone for a better bunk, but no one touches another man's hat. It's the one rule everyone honours. As weeks pass, you become part of the wardrobe. You recognise people by their coats, not their faces. That's the man with the sleeve made from a flour sack. That's the one with the green trousers and the black scarf. Faces change too quickly. Clothes stick around longer. Sometimes longer than their owners. There's a pile behind the infirmary. You're not supposed to look at it. You do anyway. Torn coats, blood-stained shirts, a pair of boots still laced. No one talks about where the pile comes from. Everyone knows. And every time your coat rips, every time your boot sole flaps, every time you notice a new hole in the crotch of your pants, you wonder how close you are to joining that pile. Not your body, just your clothes, because once you're done with them, they're not thrown out. They're passed along, sewn up, reissued. One corpse's uniform is another man's miracle, and the line between the two gets thinner every day. You're not sure when you last ate. Could have been on the train. Could have been 2 days before that. You remember a piece of bread, hard as stone, and barely enough to shut your stomach up for an hour. Since then, you've felt the same dull ache below your ribs. The kind that doesn't scream, just sits there quietly, gnawing, reminding you it's not going away. Hunger isn't a sensation anymore. It's a setting. The first time you hear the meal bell in the camp, you almost miss it. It's not a bell in the traditional sense. More like a chunk of rusted metal being beaten with something harder. It echoes flatly across the snow. Not cheerful, not even urgent, just a signal. It's time to stand in line. So you do. Everyone does. There's no talking, no rush, just movement. Boots shuffling in half-frozen slush. Scarves pulled tighter, shoulders hunched. You follow the others because that's what you've learned to do. Thinking on your own doesn't help here. It just burns energy you can't spare. The mess hall isn't a hall at all. Just a long wooden hut with a door that doesn't quite close, and windows so caked in grime they barely let in light. Inside, it's dark, damp, and louder than you expected. Not from conversation, from the scrape of bowls, the slap of ladles hitting metal, the occasional barked order from one of the kitchen workers who used to be prisoners, and now pretend they're not. You shuffle forward, bowl in hand. Yours is a chipped enamel thing you were handed when you first arrived. It used to be white. It's mostly grey now. Some of the paint flakes off when it gets hot. You try not to think about that. When you reach the front of the line, you're hit with the smell. It's hard to describe. Sour mostly. Like cabbage that gave up. Maybe beets. Maybe old water boiled into a personality crisis. There's a pot. Industrial, dented, big enough to bathe in if anyone still remembered what bathing was. Inside, a thick grey sludge sloshes slowly, occasionally interrupted by something that might have once been a vegetable. Or not. You don't ask. A man with sleeves rolled up and eyes that don't care ladles a scoop into your bowl. It lands with a wet thud. No garnish, no explanation. He doesn't make eye contact. You step aside. That's breakfast. There's bread if you're early enough. A chunk the size of your fist. Dark, dense and dry. It tastes like sawdust and bitterness. Sometimes there's a surprise in it. A shard of rye, a pebble, the occasional weevil. No one complains. If it's mouldy, you scrape it off with your spoon. If it's stale, you suck on it until it softens. If it's gone, you try not to think about bread at all. You find a place to sit. A bench nailed to the wall, slick with moisture, from hundreds of people who've done this before you. Elbows bump, shoulders crowd. You hold your bowl tight and eat quickly, not because anyone's trying to steal it, just because letting it sit gives the smell time to settle into your brain. The slop doesn't taste like much. A hint of salt. A lingering bitterness. Once in a while, you crunch down on something that feels like a bone fragment. You keep eating. You don't look too closely. This is pisture. Food, technically. Rationed by calorie, not by satisfaction. Measured against your labour quota. The harder you work, the more you're supposed to get. Supposed to, that's the theory. In reality, everyone gets the same base ration, unless someone higher up decides otherwise. Some days it's thicker, some days it's thinner. Some days it tastes like it was strained through a sock. You eat it anyway, there's no second helpings. The kitchen staff guards the pot like it's filled with gold. One of them carries a stick, not for stirring, for discouragement. You saw someone ask for more once. They got yelled at and assigned to night latrine duty for a week. You keep your head down. There are rumours of meat, not today, not this month. But stories float around. About holidays where a spoonful of lard was dropped into the pot. About a shipment of canned horse meat that once made it through the supply chain intact. About the time someone traded his boots for a slab of boiled rat. No one tells those stories with excitement, just a kind of hollow nostalgia. Water is served warm because cold water freezes too fast in the cups. It's usually yellow, sometimes brown, tastes like rust and boiled wood. You drink it all. Not because you're thirsty, because this is the only liquid you'll see until tomorrow. If you're lucky, you'll get another cup in the evening. If you're not, you'll drink snow behind the latrine and hope it doesn't make your stomach worse. Some prisoners keep salt. A pinch, hoarded in scraps of paper, traded like treasure. Others steal scraps from the kitchen. Potato peels, onion skins, anything with flavour. You see a man lick the inside of his bowl after every meal, not like a joke, like it's necessary. You start doing it too. The eating area empties fast. No one lingers. You're not here to relax. You're here to get back to work. The guards shout. The benches creak. The pot gets scraped down to the blackened bottom. The last man in line sometimes walks away with nothing. That man used to be you. You learn to walk faster. On special days, if that's even the right word, you might get kasha. It's a kind of porridge. Grainy, bland, slightly better than the usual slop, but only because it clumps together in a way that reminds you of real food. If you get kasha, it's probably because someone important is visiting the camp. You don't celebrate. You just eat it quietly and wonder what they're trying to hide. Nobody talks about the hunger. Not directly, but it's everywhere. You see it in the way people glance at your bowl when you're not looking. You see it when someone drops across the bread and 3 people move to pick it up. You see it in the eyes of the ones who stop eating halfway through their meal and just stare into the bowl like they're reading tea leaves. The worst is when you start dreaming about food, not just eating, chewing, the motion, the feel of it. Your jaw working like it remembers a life where it had a purpose beyond clenching through cold. You wake up with your mouth moving, tongue dry, breath hot, no food, just cold air and another day to survive. Hunger changes you. Not quickly, not dramatically, just gradually, like a roof caving in under slow snow. You start rationing your bites. You hold bread in your hand longer before eating it. You plan your meals in your head, even though they never change. You catch yourself staring at crumbs on the table. Some people give up. They eat what they're given, then stop working. Let the weakness take over. Their faces hollow out. Their ribs press against their coats. They lie in their bunks longer. They cough more. One day they just don't get up. You see the guards come in, drag them out. No one asks where they go. You keep eating. Not because you enjoy it, not because it helps, but because not eating is the first step toward being forgotten. Food isn't nourishment here. It's a reminder that you're still alive, that you haven't failed, that tomorrow, if the slop is thinner, you'll still be here with your dented bowl, waiting for your turn. There's no dignity in it, but there's no alternative either. You finish your shift in the dark, not late evening, not dusk, full, no sky blackness. Work stops when the guards say it stops, and not a minute sooner. Your hands barely move by the end. Your legs feel like someone else's. You drag yourself back through snowdrifts and slush, eyes fixed on the barracks, because that's the only thing resembling shelter in this place. You're soaked through. Not from rain, from sweat. Now frozen into a thin crust under your coat. You can feel the ice against your skin with every step. The wind picks up as you pass the gate. It always does. It curls through the cracks in your clothing and reminds you that you're not safe just because you're technically indoors. You reach your building and yank open a warped wooden door. Inside it's barely warmer. The smell hits you like it always does. Wet fabric, smoke, mould, bodies. It's not shocking anymore. It's just familiar. The bunks are full. Not everyone's back yet, but enough of them are. You step over boots, duck under hanging coats, and squeeze between rows until you reach yours. Lower level, near the wall, right where the wind finds every gap in the boards. You sit, or you drop. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. Muscles spasm when you bend. Your knees crack. You stretch out on the wood. There's no mattress, just a plank. Flat, cold, covered in small ridges where the wood warped years ago. You've learned not to lie directly on it. Not without padding. You pull your coat tighter, fold your scarf into a makeshift pillow, and press your shoulder against the wall, which is even colder than the air. It doesn't matter. Your body doesn't argue anymore. It just does what it's told. Sleep here isn't rest. It's retreat. A place to collapse until morning, assuming your body agrees to last that long. You don't dream. Or if you do, they don't feel like dreams. Just distant echoes of walking, of lifting, of eating. You never wake up refreshed. You wake up less tired than you were the night before. That's the best outcome. The blanket above you smells like mildew and grease. It's not your blanket. You share it with the man in the upper bunk. Sometimes he snores. Sometimes he coughs. Sometimes he doesn't move at all. You don't ask questions. You've learned to listen for breathing. Not because you care. Because if it stops, the guards will assume you had something to do with it. You sleep in your clothes. Everyone does. There's no changing into pyjamas, no warm socks, or extra layer of comfort. If you take anything off, you'll regret it. The cold finds every opportunity. The barracks stove, a rusted metal drum with a crooked pipe, hasn't been lit in hours. You can still smell the last fire, sharp and faint, but there's no heat left. Firewood is rationed. Some nights it doesn't burn at all. You curl into yourself. That's what they say. Curl tight, keep the heat in. But there's never any heat to hold. Your breath condenses against your scarf. You try not to move too much. Motion means letting the warmth escape from under your coat. Not that it's warm, just warmer than nothing. Your toes are the worst. They go first. The boots come off, but not always. If they're wet, you leave them by your head to keep them from freezing solid. If they're dry, you sleep in them. Frozen boots don't fit in the morning. And you don't want to walk around barefoot. Not here. Not on this floor. The floorboards groan under shifting bodies. Some people talk in their sleep. Some cry out. No one responds. You're not a therapist. You're not a friend. You're just trying to sleep without shivering so hard it wakes your bunkmate. There's a man across the room who hasn't stopped coughing in 3 nights. Deep, chest-shaking hacks that leave wet spots on the inside of his scarf. No one says anything. If the guards hear it, they might move him to the sick barracks. No one comes back from the sick barracks. Sometimes the guards do bed checks. Not often, but enough to keep you from getting too comfortable. The door bangs open. Cold air rushes in. A flashlight scans faces. Boots stomp through the room. They call out numbers. If you don't respond fast enough, you get dragged outside for roll call. Doesn't matter if it's midnight. Doesn't matter if it's 30 Grisingsi. They just want to remind you you're still theirs. You try to fall asleep before the cold settles into your bones. Once it's in, it doesn't leave. It spreads. First your fingers, then your thighs, then your spine. You lie still and wait. Sleep comes, eventually, in pieces. A few minutes at a time. Shallow. Interrupted. You wake up often. You don't always know why. Sometimes it's noise. Someone snoring. Someone turning over. Sometimes it's silence. The kind that feels too deep, like something's missing. You open your eyes and stare at the ceiling. You count the boards. You wait. Your dreams, when they happen, are strange. Not dramatic, just confusing. Sitting in a chair. Eating something warm. Walking in a place that doesn't hurt. You wake up angry. Not because the dream ended, because it happened at all. You'd rather feel nothing. It's easier that way. The mornings are the worst, not just because of the work ahead, because of the temperature drop. Just before dawn, the cold sharpens. You feel it in your joints, in your lungs. You stop trying to sleep and just lie there, waiting for the sound of boots, the door creak, the guard's voice shouting for everyone to get up. Sometimes you get up early just to avoid the shouting. There's no place to wash up. You splash your face with snow. You rub your teeth with your finger. Your breath stinks. Everyone's does. You stopped caring a long time ago. Every morning, someone doesn't get up. Sometimes they're dead. Sometimes they're just done. The guards come either way. A shout, a kick, a warning. If the man doesn't move, he's dragged out. No ceremony, no goodbyes. If he's lucky, someone grabs his boots before the guards do. You check your own feet, wiggle your toes. Still there, still yours. You check your coat for lice. You scratch the same spot on your side where the scabs never really heal. You rewrap your scarf. You stuff your hat deeper over your ears. Another night done. Another morning to survive. The cold didn't kill you, not this time. But it's not finished with you yet. The door opens before the sun's even tried to show up. It always does, not with a polite knock. Just a wooden slam that bounces off the walls and grabs everyone by the spine. You're already awake. Most people are. No one really sleeps past dawn. Not unless they've stopped breathing. The guard yells something. It's the same phrase every morning. Clipped, sharp, not worth translating anymore. It means stand up. It means move. It means your day is starting whether you're ready or not. And you're not. No one is. You sit up on your plank, back aching, legs sore from the day before. The cold is immediate. It never left. It just waited. Your coat is stiff. Your scarf is damp where your breath froze in the fabric overnight. You pull on your boots, not because they're dry, but because they exist. That's enough. The man on the bunk above you groans. He's older. Not old, just older than you, which here means his body is giving up faster. You help him down, not out of kindness, but because if he falls, the guards will keep everyone outside longer while they figure out whose fault it was. You step out into the morning and instantly regret it. It's not just cold, it's absurd. The kind of cold that makes your breath freeze to your teeth, that makes your eyelashes stick together. 30-degree spikes if you're lucky. Worse if the wind picks up. Your ears go numb within a minute. Your fingertips follow, even through your gloves. If you have gloves, there's already a line forming. Rows of bodies, still and hunched, lined up like dominoes that never got knocked over. Everyone knows where to stand. You find your spot. You take it. You wait. Roll call doesn't begin right away. First, the guards count the line. Then they recount. Then they argue with each other about the number. Someone on the end sneezes. He gets a glare. You try not to shift your weight too much. Movement draws attention. Attention is risk. You don't speak. You don't even look around. The snow crunches under your boots as you adjust. That's the only sound. That and the wind. Always the wind. It slides through layers of clothing like it knows where the gaps are. Finally, a voice starts calling numbers. One at a time, loud, flat. You listen for yours. When you hear it, you answer. Not too loud, not too quiet. Just enough to be heard. Just enough to not stand out. The goal isn't to be noticed. The goal is to disappear in plain sight. Sometimes the guard asks a question. Where were you yesterday? Why did you leave the line? Did you speak to someone outside your work detail? These aren't real questions. They're reminders. That they can make your life harder any time they feel like it. A man 2 spots down forgets his number. He says the wrong one. The guards stop. Everything stops. One of them walks over and says nothing, just stares. The man stares back. Then he says the right number. The guard punches him in the stomach. No explanation. Just a warning to everyone else. No one flinches. That's part of the ritual. Sometimes someone's missing. The guard reads a number. Silence. Reads it again. Still nothing. Then he writes it down and moves on. No search party. No concern. Missing usually means dead. Or collapsed somewhere along the trail. Or frozen in a ditch with their coat wrapped around their boots to keep their feet warm before the rest of them stopped working. Other times, a body's right there, lying in the snow behind the barracks. Face down, curled up, stiff. The guards step over it like a fallen log. They'll deal with it later. Right now, the list comes first. You're still standing. That's what counts. But it's getting harder. Your knees start to lock. Your jaw aches from clenching. You think about flexing your fingers, but you don't. Movement is suspicious. You dig your toes into your boots instead. Try to create friction without being seen. The roll call keeps going. Names, numbers, a head count that never feels like it ends. They read slowly like they enjoy dragging it out. The colder it is, the longer it takes. That's not an accident. You're being tested every morning. Not just for discipline, for durability. Eventually someone shouts a total. The guard nods. The line breaks. Not all at once. Just enough to release the pressure. People shuffle toward the mess hut, toward the tool shed, toward the next task. You stay in formation until the group starts moving. That's how it's done. Your body is shaking now. Not violently. Just enough to remind you that you're still human for now. You tuck your chin deeper into your scarf and breathe through your nose. It helps. A little. You notice the frost on the back of the man in front of you. His coat is stiff with it. Crystals forming at the edges. He doesn't brush them off. They'll just come back. Someone stumbles near the back of the line. Their knee gives out. They hit the snow. The guards shout, but no one helps. They try to stand. They don't. Two others lift them under the arms and drag them to the side. You don't look. You keep moving. By the time you reach the worksite, the sun is finally up. Barely. Just a smear of light over the trees. It doesn't warm anything. It doesn't change anything. It just makes the ice shine. The morning continues. Breakfast is a blur. Tools are distributed. Orders are barked. You start digging, or lifting, or carrying. Doesn't matter what. It's all the same. But the cold sticks with you. You feel it in your bones, even after your body starts sweating. It waits. Quiet. Patient. It always comes back at night. They hand you a tool, not with care, not with instruction. Just a grunt and a frozen iron bar that used to be a shovel, or maybe a pickaxe, depending on how generous you're feeling. The wood is splintered, the metal is dull, and it's cold enough to burn your hands through gloves, if you're lucky enough to have gloves. If not, you just take it and pretend your skin isn't already screaming. You follow the line, past the fence, through the gate, toward the worksite. One of many. It could be a mine today. Could be a road, or a logging camp, or a trench that no one explains. They don't tell you why you're digging. You don't ask. You just start swinging. The ground is frozen solid. Permafrost. You've never felt soil this hard. It doesn't give. It doesn't bend. It laughs at your tool. Your pickaxe bounces off the earth like you're tapping concrete. The first few swings don't do anything. The next few either. You keep going. Your arms ache before the first break. Not that there are breaks, really. Just pauses while someone else gets yelled at. The guards walk the line. They watch for anyone lagging. If they think you're faking, they shout. If you keep faking, they hit. If you stop moving altogether, they remove you. and not gently. You dig. Not for treasure. Not for progress. Just because they told you to. You break apart the same patch of ground someone else broke yesterday. Maybe it's a drainage ditch. Maybe it's nothing, it doesn't matter. Your job is motion. Work is tied to your rations. That's the system. You meet your quota, you eat. You don't, you eat less. And the quotas aren't based on reason. They're based on imagination. Chop 6 cubic meters of wood. Move 10 wheelbarrows of gravel. Dig 4 meters of trench in soil that hasn't thawed since the last ice age. You look around. Everyone's moving. Slow, broken, robotic. No one talks. Talking wastes energy. Energy keeps you alive. You fall into the rhythm. Swing, strike, lift, throw. Breathe through your mouth. Watch your step. Don't twist your back. Don't make noise. Don't cry. The tools break often. Handles snap. Metal bends. If yours breaks, you're expected to fix it. With what? Doesn't matter. Borrow wire. Carve a new handle. Lash it together with old rope. Just make it work. If you can't, you don't work. If you don't work, well, you already know how that ends. The sun rises a little higher. Not enough to help. Just enough to remind you that time is still happening. Your body doesn't believe it. Your muscles feel hollow. Your stomach burns. Your spine is stuck in a curve it wasn't designed for. You get a short stop around midday. Not a meal. Just a moment to chew your bread, drink your water, and pretend your bones aren't turning to powder. You find a spot on a log or a rock. If you're fast, you get a place near the barrel fire. If not, you squat in the snow and breathe through your nose to keep your insides warm. The bread is hard, the water is warm. Sometimes there's a smear of porridge, usually not. You chew slow to make it last. You hold your bowl like it's made of gold. It's not. It's chipped enamel and rust. But it's yours. And it's clean enough to fool your brain for 20 minutes. Then it's back to work. No signal, no speech, just motion. The guards start moving again, and everyone follows. You pick up your tool. Your hands crack from the cold. Your shoulders scream. You swing again. You start thinking strange thoughts. Not dramatic ones. Just weird little ideas that sneak in when your mind is trying to protect itself. You think about how many steps it takes to walk from the bunk to the gate. You count how many times the guard adjusts his hat. You start remembering meals from 5 years ago, real meals, hot ones, the sound of a spoon scraping a clean plate. You wonder what day it is. Then you wonder why that matters. Time doesn't make sense here. There's no calendar, no dates, just repetition. You guess it's been a month since you arrived, or 2. Your beard grew in. You lost weight. Your coat fits differently. That's all you have to go on. Sometimes someone talks to you. A whisper, a mutter. Usually just one word, tired, or cold, or done. You nod. That's all you can do. Conversations take too much air. And hope. And you're short on both. You see men collapse, not often. Just enough to remind you what happens next. The guards check. If the man can stand, he's told to get up. If he can't, they pull him off the line. If he really can't, they leave him there for the stretcher crew. Other prisoners, dragging a sled made from broken fence parts and bits of rope. No one mourns. Everyone's too tired. Sometimes you hear laughter. It's not normal laughter. Not happy. Just that loose, cracked kind that happens when someone's mind slips a little. A guard hears it and walks over. The man stops. He always stops. One way or another. You wonder how long your body can keep doing this. Not just the work, the everything. The cold, the weight, the hunger, the silence. You feel like you're folding inward, like your joints are tightening, like your organs are shrinking to conserve space, You don't feel pain the same way anymore. Just pressure. Dull and constant. You keep swinging. You keep digging. You keep existing. Some men plan to escape. Not out loud. Just in their eyes. You can tell when someone's not here anymore. When they've started looking past the fences, past the towers, towards something else. They don't last long. Either the cold gets them, or the guards do. The forest doesn't care. Neither does the snow. You don't think about escape. Not seriously. Not anymore. There's nowhere to go. Just more cold. More trees. More white. You wouldn't make it 10 kilometres. You know that now. Even if you did, you'd just find another version of this somewhere else. So you keep working, because that's all there is. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Or just work and wait to die. Whatever comes first. No one hands you a rule book when you arrive. There's no orientation, no pamphlet titled How to Behave in the Gulag Without Dying Immediately. You're expected to figure it out the way everyone else did, by watching, by mimicking, and by not speaking unless you're spoken to. The guards don't explain the rules. They just enforce them. And if you break one, they'll let you know with a kick to the ribs or the business end of a rifle stock. But what you do have, what you get right away, without asking, without applying, without training, is a list of responsibilities. Work. Always work. Whether you're sick, injured, old, starving, or about to lose a toe to frostbite, you're expected to show up and contribute. Contribution, in this context, means breaking your body 1 hour at a time to meet a quota set by someone who's never seen the site and doesn't care if you live long enough to complete it. Fall short and your food gets cut. Fall again and you're labelled a saboteur. That label sticks. It follows you like a shadow. And people with that label disappear. Clean the barracks, clean the camp, clean the latrines, even when it's 40 quid and the contents are frozen solid and you're expected to chip away at human waste with a shovel so rusted it barely qualifies as metal. Don't want to. Too bad. Refusal means punishment duty. More work, harder work, with less food and more eyes on you. Stand for roll call, no matter the temperature. No matter if your boots are frozen to the floor or your lungs are full of infection, you show up, you stand still, you answer when your number's called. If you collapse, someone might drag you upright just to keep the count correct. Then they'll put you back in the snow until you stop moving. Carry your own tools, no matter how heavy, no matter how far. You break your pickaxe, you carry the pieces. You drop your shovel. You run to get it. Tools aren't just tools. They're your burden. Lose one and you're labelled negligent. Let someone else take yours and you're accused of organisational sabotage. That's not a warning. That's a charge. Help others? Only if it doesn't slow you down. No one tells you this, but it's understood. Pulling a man out of a snowbank might mean you fall behind on your own quota. And if you fall behind, no one cares why. You're responsible for your time, for your progress, for your survival. Not his, not theirs. Remember your number. It's more important than your name. Your name has no value here. It's not in the ledgers. It's not on the boards. And the guards don't use it. You are a number in a column. And that number has to match. Forget it, or mix it up during roll call, and you'll be corrected. Physically. And loudly. Protect state property. This includes the camp fence, your tools, the camp dog, the uniforms, and the stove in the barracks. If you're caught stealing wood, even to keep warm, you're a threat to national order. If your coat goes missing, and someone sees you wearing a different one, even if it came from a corpse, You're accused of theft. From the state. The state doesn't like thieves. Follow orders. No matter how pointless, repetitive, or contradictory. Dig a ditch. Fill it in the next day. Carry rocks from one side of the yard to the other, then back again. Ask why, and you'll be told that questions aren't your job. You're not here to understand. You're here to obey. Attend re-education sessions. When they happen, which isn't often, but they do, a man in a clean coat will stand at the front of a room and read speeches about loyalty, duty, and how labour liberates the soul. If you yawn, you're marked down. If you doze off, you're punished. If you repeat what you heard later with anything less than perfect reverence, someone reports you, and the whole thing starts over. Report suspicious behaviour. It's your duty, they say. If someone complains too loudly, if someone mutters a joke, if someone refuses food, these are all signs of disloyalty. And if you don't report it, and someone else does, then you're complicit. They make that very clear. Keep records, not written ones. Those get you in trouble. Just mental logs. Who's sick? Who's stealing? Who's breaking? Who's watching? Who's whispering in corners? This is what surviving looks like. Watching everyone else fail, and making sure you're not standing too close when they do. You're also responsible for your own health. Theoretically, there's an infirmary, but it's not what you think. It's one room, 2 cots. No medicine, no doctors, just prisoners who were once veterinarians maybe, or assistants. They hand out aspirin that expired a decade ago, and if you're bleeding, they wrap it with cloth stripped from someone's old shirt. You don't want to go there. People who go there don't come back. To avoid that, you become your own doctor. You monitor your cough. You lance your own blisters. You chew pine needles because someone once said it helps. You eat snow when your lips crack. You sleep with your hands tucked under your arms so you can still grip a shovel the next morning. But above all, your main responsibility is this: do not die before you've been used up. That's the unspoken agreement. The system doesn't care how much you suffer, as long as you do it efficiently. If you die too soon, you're wasteful. If you die too late, you're a burden. The ideal prisoner is the one who breaks just after finishing the final task of the day, but before dinner is served. And for all of this, the labour, the loyalty, the forced silence and forced movement, you are given nothing in return. You have no right to complain, no right to rest, no right to refuse, no right to speak, no right to know how long you'll be here, no right to know if your sentence is being extended, no right to appeal, no right to contact anyone beyond the fence, no right to ask why you were arrested in the first place. You may be allowed to write one letter every few months. It will be read, censored, rewritten, and sometimes never delivered. You might receive one in return. Maybe. If someone still remembers you, if someone's still alive, you cannot own anything here. Not legally, not emotionally, not physically. If something is yours, it's yours because no one's stolen it yet. That includes your boots, your spoon, your blanket, your dignity. They tell you these rules keep the camp orderly. They say discipline is necessary. They say this is for the good of the Soviet people. But you already know the truth. This place doesn't want you to behave. It wants you to vanish. Quietly, efficiently, and without making too much of a mess. You figure it out early. The more you talk, the more you lose. Not your time, not your rations, your stability. People here don't last, not in one piece, not for long. At first, you're relieved to hear voices. Back on the train, it was mostly silence. People too afraid, too hungry, or too broken to speak. But once you're in the camp, surrounded by the same faces day after day, the words start to come. Quietly, cautiously. Men talk while fixing tools. Whispers in the line for soup. Short sentences in the dark before sleep. Someone tells you where they're from. Someone else says how long they've been here. Someone mumbles the name of a daughter, a wife, a street. You learn their stories. Not all at once, just fragments. One guy stole bread in Leningrad. Another made the mistake of laughing at the wrong joke in a meeting. One claims he's innocent. They all do, but he says it with a level of conviction that makes you believe him. Almost. Someone else says nothing at all, just nods, shrugs, stares. It feels good at first, having someone to talk to. Familiar, even. Almost normal. A man on your work team shows you how to carry gravel more efficiently. Another lets you borrow a scrap of cloth to pad your boots. You start walking together between jobs, trading sentences like they mean something. But then, one morning, one of them doesn't show up. You ask around, carefully. No one answers. By evening, his bunk is already taken. His name isn't spoken again. It's not forbidden. Just gone. That's how it works. Sometimes they're reassigned. Sometimes they're dead. Sometimes they're in punishment barracks or out in the woods digging something for someone who lost the map. You don't know. You don't get told. You're not supposed to ask. Questions carry weight and your back is already full. There's a man named Pavel, or maybe that wasn't his name. You knew him for 5 days. He was thin, but fast. Joked that he used to be a schoolteacher, though he never said where. He told you about birds, the ones that live through Siberian winters. He could name them by sound. One night, he didn't come back from work detail. The next morning his name was scrubbed from the list by the stove. By afternoon, someone else was wearing his coat. Friendship here isn't friendship, it's proximity. Shared silence. The occasional favour. A spoonful of slop. A spot closer to the fire. A warning before the guards show up. But it never lasts. The people you get used to disappear. And if they don't vanish, they change. Fast. Some go quiet. Others get mean. You see it in their eyes. Like something turned inward gave up and started hollowing them out from behind the skull. They start snapping at everyone. They stop eating. They stare too long at the fence. You stop talking to them. You stop looking. Because if you get too close, you get pulled in. And if they go down, someone has to take their place. The smarter ones, the survivors, keep their distance. They talk, but only just enough. They trade, but never favour the same person twice. They nod instead of greeting. They sleep facing the wall. It's not cruelty, it's math. Friendship implies future. And here, future is a rumour. You still remember the first time someone tried to protect you. A man from your bunk stepped in when a guard accused you of slacking. Said it was his fault. He took the blame. You thought it meant something. Thought maybe there was still such a thing as loyalty. He was assigned double shifts for 2 weeks. You never saw him again after that. You learned your lesson. You start to forget people faster. You train yourself not to ask names. You stop wondering where someone went when their bunk is suddenly empty. You start looking at new arrivals like luggage, temporary, worn, probably not going to last. There's no privacy in the barracks, but people try to build walls in other ways. A line drawn in the dirt between sleeping spots. a coat folded carefully to form a boundary. No one asks personal questions. You don't share memories. No one wants to hear about your hometown. No one wants to picture your mother. It makes things complicated. The idea of missing someone becomes a luxury. It's easier to forget. Easier to let silence do the work. There are still cliques, usually by nationality or language. A few Poles here. A few Ukrainians. One guy from Georgia who talks like he's from a different planet. They stick together at first, but the guards don't like that. Too much unity looks like organisation. An organisation looks like rebellion. So the guards move people around, shuffle bunk assignments, reassign work crews, split up anyone who gets too comfortable, sometimes just for fun. You might share a shovel with someone for 2 weeks and then never see them again. You stop counting days. You stop tracking faces. Instead you remember details. The man who limps when it's cold. The one with a broken tooth. The one who hums while peeling potatoes. When they vanish, you remember the detail, not the person. Not their name, not their voice. Just the limp. Just the hum. That's all that's safe to keep. You notice the new ones. They arrive looking around too much. Asking questions, reaching out. The older prisoners keep their distance. You watch them stumble through the first week, trying to make friends, trying to find allies. You already know what's coming. By Tuesday, they're alone again. If they're smart, they stay that way. You wake up coughing, not just a dry throat, not a tickle. It's deeper than that. Something lodged under your ribs, shaking your lungs loose. You sit up slowly and spit into your scarf. Red, not a lot. Just enough to let you know something's wrong. You already know what the others will say. Don't go to the infirmary. They don't mean it as advice. It's just something everyone repeats. A warning. A rule. Still, after work, when your cough gets worse, and you can't straighten your back without wheezing, you walk to the far end of camp, past the barracks, past the mess, to the low building that always smells like wet wood, boiled gauze, and something faintly sweet, like rot that used to be sugar. The infirmary isn't a hospital, it's barely a hut. It has a red cross painted above the door, faded and chipped, like a joke that stopped being funny decades ago. Inside, it's cold, somehow colder than outside. The windows are cracked, the stove is dead, the floor is wet from melting snow carried in on boots. No one's mopped, probably ever. There are 2 beds, sir. One of them is full. The other has bloodstains on the blanket. You stand and wait. Eventually someone appears. Not a doctor. A prisoner in a coat 2 sizes too big. He has a clipboard and a pencil so worn down it looks like a toothpick. His hair is grey. His eyes are empty. He doesn't ask how you feel. He asks if you're contagious. You say you don't know. He writes something on a scrap of paper and tells you to sit. Not on the bed, on the floor, against the wall. Another man comes in. He's got a limp and a bandage on one hand. His breath smells like vodka and old tobacco. He tells you to open your mouth. You do. He shines a flashlight in, barely. Nods once. Then tells you to stop coughing. You don't. He shrugs and says it's probably not tuberculosis. Yet. Then he gives you a choice. Either you keep working and he'll recommend you for recovery status, which means 1 less hour of labour, or you can stay here and be marked unfit, which means smaller rations and worse treatment. You know what happens to people who stop working? You choose recovery status. He gives you pills, unlabelled, white, covered in dust. They might be aspirin, they might be chalk. You take them anyway. It's something to do. He gives you one more thing, a small bottle with a brownish liquid and no label. You ask what it is. He says it's vodka. You ask if it will help. He says it won't make things worse. You take a sip. It burns. Not the clean kind of burn. This stuff was probably made in a bucket with gasoline, but it clears your sinuses for a minute. That's the most relief you've had in days. Then you're sent back to work. Not that day, the next. You spend the night in the infirmary, lying on a cot that sags in the middle. Your blanket smells like old meat. There's no pillow. You use your boots. A man in the next bed groans all night. In the morning he doesn't move. The guards drag him out like he's a sack of flour. No one says anything. When you return to your barracks, no one asks where you were. They all saw you leave. They assume you're dying. Everyone here is, but going to the infirmary means it's happening faster than usual. You don't argue. Healthcare in the Gulag isn't about getting better. It's about getting quiet. They don't want you to recover. They want you to function. There's a difference. If your leg is broken, they give you a stick to walk with. If you're bleeding, they wrap it in whatever they can find. Old shirts, potato sacks, sometimes just newspaper. You hold it there yourself. They don't do stitches. They don't set bones. If it heals, great. If not, you limp until you fall. You hear stories. One guy lost his fingers to frostbite. They turned black, then grey, then soft. He showed the nurse. She nodded and handed him a hacksaw. No joke. Told him to get it over with before infection set in. He never finished the job. Someone else had to. Toothaches? You're out of luck. They pulled teeth with pliers. No anaesthesia. You scream. Then you're told to be quiet because you're disturbing the others. One guy tried to pull his own molar with a spoon. It didn't work. He ended up swallowing the spoon and choking. The guards called it self-sabotage. If you catch typhus, and you probably will, you get moved to the quarantine zone, which is just a barrack with no stove and no light. They give you half rations. If you make it through the week, you get moved back. If not, your boots go to someone else. And forget about mental health. If you're hallucinating, crying, or talking to yourself, they call it malingering. If you're lucky, they ignore you. If you're not, you get beaten until you stop making noise. Some prisoners used to be doctors, real ones, trained, educated. They're here too. Sometimes they get assigned to the infirmary, but they don't have supplies, no scalpels, no antibiotics, no antiseptic. Just what they can scavenge. They do their best. It's not enough. There's one man with a limp who used to be a surgeon. You hear about him. They say he did an appendectomy with a butter knife and a sewing needle. The patient lived, then died a month later from dysentery. No one blamed the surgeon. Everyone blamed the water. Clean water isn't a guarantee. Neither is soap. You wash your hands in melted snow, if at all. Your clothes never dry. Your body never heals. Cuts get infected. Bruises don't fade. You learn to ignore the pain until you can't. You're responsible for staying alive, but the tools aren't there. So you improvise. You chew pine bark for vitamin C. You wrap cloth around your joints when they swell. You drink boiled moss for healing properties, because someone from another barrack swore it helped. You wonder if you're already sick. Maybe you've always been sick. Maybe everyone is, and this is just the new normal. There's a guard with a limp who walks the yard every morning. You hear he was once a prisoner too. Got promoted. Took a bullet in the leg during a scuffle. They patched him up with a belt and a plank. He still walks, he still hits people with the butt of his rifle. So maybe that's success, in context. Eventually your cough fades. Not because you're better, just because you stop noticing it. Your lungs adapt, or they give up. Either way, you're back at work, back in the line, back among the ones still moving. Healthcare here isn't healing, it's survival theatre. And everyone's already forgotten your visit. You think about food constantly, not because you're greedy, not because you're soft, because hunger is the one thing that doesn't leave you alone. Not even for a second. You wake up hungry, you work hungry, you sleep hungry. You dream of food, not feasts, not celebrations, just a boiled potato, a slice of buttered bread, a bowl of soup where you can actually see the ingredients. You remember how it used to feel, being full, that dull, warm weight in your stomach after a real meal. It's distant now, like a story someone else told you. In the Gulag, hunger isn't just a feeling, it's part of the design. The rations are small, always small. A chunk of bread, black, dense, heavy. One ladle of soup, if they're serving soup. Some days it's kasha. Other days, just hot water that smells faintly of cabbage and metal. You take it anyway. They tell you the food is tied to your work. Meet your quota, get your full ration. Miss it, and they cut it down. Even if the quota was impossible from the start, even if you worked until your hands bled and your legs buckled, it doesn't matter. Numbers are numbers, and you're always behind. You learn to ration what little you get, eat the crust first, save the soft centre, dip it in the soup to stretch the flavour. Chew slow, very slow. Not to savour it, there's nothing to savour, but to make it last longer. That's the goal. Trick your body into thinking it's more than it is. Some prisoners hoard crumbs. You see them fold bits of bread into handkerchiefs, hide it in their boots, tuck it into their coats. The guards call it theft. The prisoners call it insurance. Either way, if they catch you with hidden food, they beat you. Doesn't matter that it was yours to begin with. You learn what everything tastes like. The bitter skins of potatoes, the sour streaks in spoiled cabbage, the grey, rubbery lumps that might be old barley, or might be something else. You stop asking questions. You chew and swallow. If it stays down, it's a good day. The kitchen smells make it worse. You walk past, and your body reacts before your brain does. Stomach growling, mouth watering. Even when the food is barely edible, the smell still flips a switch deep inside. That ancient instinct that says, there's something, take it. You don't. You can't. Stealing from the kitchen is suicide. The guards shoot looters. Or they don't. Sometimes they just hand them off to the punishment unit, where they disappear. Either way, one scrap of boiled beet isn't worth your life. At least not today. Still, you think about it. You start noticing what others have. How much bread they got. Whether they're chewing or swallowing. You spot the fast eaters, the slow eaters, the ones who lick their spoons clean like it's sacred. You do it too. You hear rumours. Always rumours. That someone traded a coat for a jar of lard, that a guard sells extra rations for bribes, that one of the cooks drops meat into the pot. Real meat. If you say the right thing at the right time. You never see any of it, but you keep listening. There's always talk of sugar. Sugar's a myth. Some say they had it once. A lump of it melted in tea. A reward for building a road faster than planned. You try to imagine it. Sweetness. That sting on your tongue. It feels fake, like something from a book. The hunger makes you stupid. You forget things. Your balance slips. You get dizzy when you stand up too fast. You catch yourself staring at your own hands and wondering if they've gotten thinner overnight. They probably have. Some people go further. They eat anything. Bits of leather, bark, candle wax. One guy was caught boiling a rat. The guards beat him, then took the rat and threw it in the snow. He tried to eat it anyway. Lice are everywhere. You pick them off in your bunk if you still have the strength. Someone once said you could eat them for protein. You never did. But you remember who said it? The hunger rewires your brain. It shifts your priorities. You stop caring about dignity, about fairness, about anything outside your stomach. A man once dropped his bread in the mud. He picked it up, wiped it off, and kept eating. Another guy grabbed the piece he missed. They fought over it. Neither of them won. The guards did. You notice that hope disappears the same way food does. Slowly. Then all at once. At first you think, maybe it will get better. Then, maybe I'll adapt. Then, maybe I can survive just one more week. Then you stop thinking altogether. Hope isn't practical. It doesn't heat your body. It doesn't feed your gut. It doesn't keep you awake when you want to collapse. And it definitely doesn't count toward your quota, so you trade it in for endurance, for silence, for routine. You start focusing on the next meal. Not tomorrow, not next week, just the next bowl, the next crust, the next chance to chew something real. One man in your brigade has been here for 5 years, maybe more. No one knows. He says he used to weigh 90 kilos. Now he barely cracks 60. He keeps a pebble in his pocket. Holds it when the hunger gets bad. Says it reminds his body of weight. You try it. It doesn't work. But it gives your hand something to do. Some prisoners say hunger is worse than cold. Worse than beatings. Worse than loneliness. And they're right, because hunger never ends. You can tough out the cold. You can recover from a blow. You can forget names. But hunger settles in like a tenant. It moves into your belly and builds furniture. It rearranges your thoughts. It makes itself at home. And once it's there, it doesn't leave. You don't wait for satisfaction anymore. You wait for less hunger. That's the new standard. That's how you measure success. You hear about the punishment cells long before you see one. Everyone does. They're not hidden. They're just avoided. The way you avoid a hole in the floor or the sound of a snapping bone. You know it's there. You just don't want to look directly at it. They call it the isolator or the box. Sometimes just the pit, though that's more metaphor than geography. It's not underground. It's usually a wooden shack, smaller than a barracks outhouse, bolted shut with a lock big enough to secure a train car. No windows, no chimney, no warmth. It's where they put you when regular punishment isn't enough. When yelling doesn't work. When taking your rations doesn't scare you. When beatings don't make you bleed fast enough. Sometimes they send you for real offences. Fighting, theft, refusing orders. Sometimes for less. Stepping out of line during roll call. Talking back. Looking at a guard too long. Or nothing. Maybe the guard just didn't like the way you stood that day. There are no rules about who gets sent there. Just decisions. And once you're in, there's no time limit. You leave when they let you. The first time you hear the door shut from the inside, it's not even you. It's someone from your brigade. A young guy, new, made a joke about the food during work detail. You didn't even hear it. Most didn't. But one guard did. He smiled, wrote something down. That night the guy was gone. Next day they tell you isolator. 3 days, maybe more. You ask what it's like. Someone shrugs. It's cold. That's all they say. Later, you find out more. Not from the guards, from the men who come back, the ones who last long enough to walk again. The box is about the size of a closet. Bare wood, no cot, no blanket, no bucket. Just you and the floor. In winter, the walls frost over. The floor ices. Your breath fogs, then freezes on your skin. Your eyelids stick when you blink. The cold is personal in there, like a second set of hands on your throat. You get no food, no water, or if they're feeling generous, they give you one crust and a cup once a day. Maybe you don't sleep. Not because they keep you awake, because it's impossible. Your body won't settle. You try sitting, then standing, then crouching in the corner. It doesn't matter. The cold finds you. If you scream, no one comes. If you bang the door, no one answers. You're alone with yourself and your body, which turns on you faster than expected. Some people hallucinate. They say they see their family, hear music, smell food. A trick of the brain, trying to stay alive by pretending it's somewhere else. You don't know how long most people last in there. Some leave in 2 days and never speak again. Others come out babbling. One man was dragged out, teeth chattering, mumbling about colours no one else could see. He died the next night in his bunk, shaking until his heart gave up. You see the guards dragging another one out a week later, face purple, arms stiff, his boots stuck to his feet like they'd frozen in place. He didn't move. The guards kicked him once, twice, then called for the stretcher. You get the message, but the isolator stays in your mind. You walk past it every morning. It's just off the path to the mess hut. The door is always closed. The lock rusts a little more each day. And you always wonder, who's in there today? You do everything you can to avoid it. You move carefully. You answer quickly. You don't make jokes. You don't roll your eyes. You keep your head down. You keep your voice low. You stay silent when someone else gets punished, even if it's unfair, even if it's brutal. You stay out of it, because you've seen what happens to ones who speak up. And sometimes it doesn't take much at all. A wrong answer during re-education. A rumour that you were hoarding bread. An accusation, whispered by a bunkmate who just wants your spot by the stove. That's all it takes. The isolator isn't a lesson, it's a message. You're not in control. You never were. And if you forget that, they'll remind you. In a box, with no heat, and no one watching. You don't have privacy. That's not a complaint. It's just a fact. You knew that when you arrived. No doors on the latrines. No curtains in the barracks. No walls that reach the ceiling. Every sound travels. Every movement gets tracked. At first it bothers you. Then it becomes part of the background noise, like the wind, like the coughing, like the boots crunching through snow. You get used to it, but you never get safe. Because here, it's not just about being seen. It's about being watched. Not passively, not casually, deliberately, constantly. The guards don't hide it. They walk the perimeter like clockwork. Rifles slung, expressions blank, eyes scanning as if boredom itself is an act of control. They don't look at the group, they look at individuals. They watch how long it takes you to swing your pickaxe. They count how many steps you take between tool drop-off and your bunk. They remember when you look tired and when you don't. But they're not the only ones. The inmates watch too. Not all of them, but enough. Some were put here for political crimes. Some were sent for regular theft or assault. And some were sent for something different. informing. They don't wear signs. There's no mark on their clothes. But you learn to tell. The ones who don't react when someone collapses. The ones who talk too much to guards. The ones who always seem to be standing just a little too close when you're talking quietly. They're always around. You don't accuse anyone. That's dangerous. You just adjust. You stop speaking your thoughts out loud. You stop reacting to bad news. You stop sharing anything that isn't about the weather. And even then, you keep it neutral. One day it's cold. One day it's colder. That's the entire conversation. Sometimes someone will test you. They'll say something just a little too bold. Complain about the bread. Mention Stalin's name with the wrong tone. Refer to Moscow as the people upstairs. You don't respond. That's the test. If you answer, even with a smirk, it could be written down, passed along, brought up later during roll call when a guard suddenly knows something he shouldn't. And if they suspect you're holding back, that's enough. Intent is guilt here. Silence is evidence. You hear stories. Always whispered. Always vague. Someone said the wrong thing in their sleep. Someone confessed something during fever dreams. Someone made a face during re-education and got pulled out by nightfall. You sleep with your mouth closed. There's a man in your bunkhouse who writes invisible letters. Not to mail, just to remember. He scratches messages into the wood under his bed, then erases them with his sleeve. He thinks no one notices. But someone does. One morning he's gone. His messages weren't treasonous. They were just thoughts. That was enough. There's no such thing as sarcasm here, no irony, no just joking. Words mean what they sound like. Tone doesn't save you. Context doesn't help. You're not supposed to have opinions, so you stop having them. You nod when told. You agree with speeches. You pretend you understand the latest slogans painted on the walls, even when they contradict the last ones. Last month, it was Labour is liberation. Now it's Labour is duty. No one mentions the change. They just recite it louder. You hear footsteps outside the barracks at night. Not always, just enough. Heavy boots, soft boots. 1 pair, 2, maybe more. They stop outside the door. Sometimes the door opens. Sometimes it doesn't. You learn not to look. The ones who look are the ones they take. The air inside becomes rehearsed. Everyone acts. Everyone performs. Every comment is shaped. Every silence is calculated. Even your body language has to follow a script. Don't look bored. Don't look too interested. Don't look away too fast. When the guards call your name, you respond evenly. No surprise, no irritation, just obedience, like you were already expecting it. One prisoner, a quiet man, always kept to himself, refused to answer a question. Just stood there, blank. The guard asked again. No answer. He wasn't mute, he wasn't defiant. He just didn't speak. They dragged him out of line. No one saw him again. Later, someone found a small notebook in his mattress, full of lists, not names, just numbers. That was enough. You realise you've started watching people too. Not because you're informing, because you need to know who might be, who talks too much, who repeats the guard's words too cleanly, who's always first to answer during roll call. You keep mental tabs. You adjust your behaviour when they're near. One day, you speak too quickly during re-education. You agree with something before it's finished being said. A man sitting beside you turns his head, just slightly. The next week, your food ration is cut. You're not told why. You just know. Coincidence doesn't exist here. Everything connects to something. Everyone connects to someone. You stop writing anything, even numbers, even dates. Your memory gets sharper, because that's all you have. And still, you know you've missed something. Because watching isn't just happening now. It's already happened. They watched you before your arrest, listened at your door, read your letters, heard your hesitation during meetings you forgot about. That's how you got here in the first place. You're not paranoid. They really are watching. And worse, they always were. People talk about escape, quietly, in code, in fragments. Never like a plan, more like a habit. Something to think about when the frostbite spreads slower than usual, or the bread ration seems slightly larger that day. You don't believe most of them. No one else does either. It's not serious talk. It's just something the brain does when it doesn't want to think about dying. You start to recognise the signs. Someone staring too long at the fence line, asking how far the next settlement is, mentioning things like moss on trees or where the moon rises. It's not conversation, it's preparation. And everyone pretends not to hear it. The camp is isolated, on purpose. There's a fence, yes. There are towers, guards, dogs, all of that. But those aren't what keep you inside. It's the geography. Flat or forested or mountainous, depending on the camp. But always endless, always cold, always empty. You can walk for a day and still not find anything but snow and your own footprints. Some try anyway. You hear about them in the abstract. He made a run for it. They found him in the woods. He took someone's coat and didn't come back. They never tell you the whole story. They don't need to. Everyone already knows how it ends. One guy from your work team vanished one morning, took off while guards were distracted. He had bread wrapped in a rag and a stolen axe handle. They found him 2 days later, half frozen, covered in cuts, barefoot. No one asked why he did it. They just shook their heads and watched the guards drag him back through the gate. He wasn't punished right away. That came later. The real punishment isn't the beating. It's the way the guards look at you afterwards. Like, now they know you believe in something, and now they're going to take that from you too. Some prisoners are smart. They try to blend in with work convoys or wagon shipments, cut their hair, steal a jacket, hide under a tarp. The problem isn't getting out, it's surviving after. There's nothing waiting beyond the perimeter except cold and distance. No food, no help, and nowhere to hide. Even if you get out, there are forests full of checkpoints, villages that report strangers, roads patrolled by people who've been told you're dangerous. Not because you are, because you left. That's enough. Sometimes people try to escape in pairs. It never works. Someone always slows down. Someone always makes noise. Or someone turns on the other when the cold gets worse than the fear. You hear stories about that too. 2 men escape. One comes back, the other doesn't. No one asks. You don't fantasize about escape in the traditional way. Not breaking fences or outrunning dogs. You think about it in slower terms. Getting transferred to a different camp. Getting sick enough to be sent back to the city. Getting lost in paperwork and forgotten. Released by accident. It never happens. But thinking about it helps on the worst days. When your boots have no lining and your stomach feels like it's trying to digest itself. You imagine walking through the trees and seeing a cabin. Not a warm one, just one with a roof. Or finding a stream that leads to a river that leads to a place without towers. Even in your mind, the fantasy ends before you're safe. You can't picture a full escape. Not because you're pessimistic, because you've been here long enough to understand scale. You've seen the distances. You've seen what happens to men who miss one meal, walking for days without food, without fire, without shoes. It's not freedom. It's a slower version of the same ending. You never hear about successful escapes, not once. Maybe they happened, but no one talks about them. If someone really did make it out, the guards would never admit it. They'd just mark the file and assign blame down the chain. Maybe someone would be demoted. Maybe not. Sometimes someone gets caught helping an escape. That's worse than running. It's labelled conspiracy, sabotage, treason. The punishment is immediate, usually public. Not for justice, for demonstration. You meet a man who once worked at a station near the Arctic. He says the snow up there is so dry, your footprints fill in behind you within minutes. He talks about using stars to navigate. Everyone listens, but no one believes he's serious. He's not. He just wants to talk about stars. Another guy says he can tell north from the way tree bark grows. He's probably lying, or repeating something he read years ago. Doesn't matter. The idea feels useful. You tuck it away even though you'll never use it. No one laughs at escape stories. They're not funny. They're just part of the air. Everyone's had the thought at least once. Some hold onto it for a week, some for a year. Eventually it fades, gets replaced with more manageable goals, like dry socks or a full stomach. You remember one man who stopped eating, quietly, gradually, not protesting, just letting it happen. People whispered that he was escaping in the only way left to him. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't fast, but no one stopped him, not even the guards. That's another kind of escape, and it worked. You think about whether it's worth trying, just once, waiting for a storm, digging under the fence, moving at night, hiding in the woods. You don't get far in the idea before you run into the same questions. What would you eat? Where would you sleep? Who would help you? You stop imagining it. Not because it's impossible, because it makes returning harder. And you always return, even if it's just in your mind. People talk about release. Not often, not out loud, just enough to keep the idea alive. Most don't expect it. Some pretend not to care. A few count the days, if they still remember how. On paper, most prisoners have a sentence. 2 years, 5, 10. It looks official. There's a number on your file, maybe even a date. But inside the camp, time doesn't follow that kind of logic. Time moves based on usefulness, behaviour, accidents, suspicions, favours and paperwork that gets lost on purpose. You hear about men who served their time, finished their sentence exactly as written. On the last day, they lined up at the gate and waited, and waited, and waited. Then were told there'd been a mistake, or an extension, or an administrative delay. Some were told nothing, just handed a new work order and sent back to their detail. If you ask about it, the guards say you're being difficult. If you ask twice, you're punished. The moment you treat your sentence like a contract, they remind you it's not. Release happens, technically, occasionally. You see a man leave once, walks through the gate with a small sack and an expression you can't read. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak. Just moves like he's not sure what's waiting on the other side. He looks healthier than most. He had a desk job inside. Less exposure. More food. People watch but don't say anything. When he's gone, they go back to eating. Later you hear he was arrested again 3 months after release. Same charge. Anti-Soviet agitation. No one is surprised. Even if you do get out, you're not free. You're relocated, assigned, watched. You're required to report to local authorities. Your papers carry your past. You're not called rehabilitated. You're labelled former convict, former threat, former person. Work options are limited. No one hires you if they don't have to. If you find a job, it's the kind no one else wants. Factory work, trash hauling, something out of sight. Your wages are capped. Your movements are restricted. Some cities are closed to you entirely. You're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to serve. You're not allowed to speak publicly about your time in the camps. If you do, it's called slander. If you write it down, it's confiscated. If you try to publish it, you vanish again. Families of released prisoners aren't safe either. They get visits, phone calls, warnings. Some get blacklisted from jobs or schools. It doesn't end when you walk out of the gate. It just moves sideways. There's a man in your barracks who's on his second sentence. He was released 6 years ago. Tried to go back to his hometown. Someone from his old office reported him for antisocial behaviour. He never found out what that meant. Could have been a joke. Could have been a letter. Doesn't matter. He was back on the train within a month. He doesn't speak much. Just works and sleeps. Says he's done thinking about what comes next. You meet others who were arrested after being released. One for asking about back pay. One for writing to the wrong person. One because the paperwork from his release didn't match the records from his trial. That was enough to restart the sentence. No one trusts the word rehabilitation. You hear it during speeches. It's painted on a sign in the re-education hut. You see it in the paperwork. But no one believes it means anything. Rehabilitation would mean forgiveness, understanding, some attempt at correction. What you get is labour, surveillance, erasure. No one teaches you anything useful in the camp. There are no classes, no training, nothing to prepare you for life after. You leave with worse health, less strength, and a record that follows you. And even if they did offer rehabilitation, most prisoners wouldn't know what to do with it. Years of silence and repetition strip out the ability to plan or rebuild. You lose the habits that made you social. You forget how to make choices. You forget how to speak in full sentences. There's no celebration when someone is released. No goodbye. No handshake. Just the absence. A bunk that stays empty. A name crossed off a list. Some don't even leave with a coat. Some of the older ones don't want to go. They've been here too long. The idea of freedom feels heavier than the cold. They've stopped writing to family. They've stopped pretending anyone is still waiting. When they hear their name, they nod like they've been told it's time to move to a different job, not a different life. You ask yourself if you'd leave if the gate opened today. You don't say it out loud, just think it through. Would you know where to go? Who to call? What to do with your hands if you weren't holding a shovel? You stop thinking about it after a while. You stop dreaming about cities and trains and regular clothes. You focus on the next meal, the next task, the next time your boots don't hurt as much. Hope becomes an optional burden. You don't carry it unless you're strong enough to afford it. Release is a possibility, but it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't rebuild who you were. They let you out. But they don't give you back. When you're finally released, there's no ceremony, no apology, no announcement. A guard calls your number in the morning and hands you a slip of paper. It says you've completed your sentence. You're told to gather your things. That's it. You don't have many things. Most of them aren't even yours. A shirt that used to belong to someone else. Boots that don't match. A spoon you've managed to hang on to. You put them in a sack made from an old flour bag. You stand by the gate and wait. The others don't speak to you, not because they're unfriendly, because they don't want to draw attention. They know the line between being released and being punished for incorrect behaviour is thin. Sometimes people get pulled back in before they reach the road. No one wants to be associated with someone who might be under review. When the truck arrives, you climb in. It's cold. There's no heat. The other passengers don't look at each other. Some are released prisoners. Some are guards rotating out. The driver doesn't talk. You don't know where you're going. The paper you were given says something about relocation. It's a town you've never heard of. You're told to report to an office when you arrive. They'll explain everything there. The road out of the camp doesn't feel real. You're looking at trees you saw for years through barbed wire. Now they're just trees. The fences vanish behind you. You think you should feel something, relief, anger, anything, but you don't. Just cold air on your face and the weight of the bag in your lap. The town is small, plain, quiet. No one welcomes you. No one cares who you are. You're given a place to stay. It's a shared room in a crumbling building. You sleep on a cot. The walls are cracked. The window doesn't close all the way. You report to the office. It's a man with a folder and a short list of instructions. You're not allowed to leave the district without permission. You have to check in twice a month. You can apply for work, but you can't hold a job in any public or sensitive sector. That means no schools, no offices, no postal work, no transportation. You're told not to talk about your sentence. You're told not to ask questions. You're told to follow the rules and keep your head down. You find work hauling bricks. It's not much different from what you were doing inside, except now there's less structure. You get paid, barely. It's enough for bread and soup. Some nights, you skip meals to save for a coat. No one trusts you, the neighbours don't speak. The shopkeepers stare. If you say you're a former prisoner, they nod, but don't say anything back. You're not part of anything. You're not seen as a citizen. You're just here. You think about writing a letter home. If anyone's still there, if anyone's still alive, you don't know what to say. I'm out doesn't mean anything. There's no way to explain where you've been. You try once. The letter never gets a reply. You hear stories, other former prisoners trying to go home, getting turned away, being followed, getting arrested again because they talked to the wrong person or failed to report on time. Some disappeared before they even made it to their assigned city. Others broke down trying to adjust. There's no system to help. No one checks if you're eating or sleeping or getting by. You still wake up in the night, thinking someone's going to call your number. You still listen for footsteps outside the door. You still fold your clothes a certain way. You still eat with your body hunched forward, like someone might take it away from you. Time passes, but it doesn't heal anything. It just covers it. You meet another former prisoner once, in the market. You both recognise the look. The quiet, cautious way of standing. The habit of watching the exits. You nod at each other, but you don't speak. It's not just that you don't want to remember. It's that no one would believe it anyway. The details sound made up. The routines, the cold, and the way everything broke down into numbers and hours and silence. It doesn't sound real when you say it out loud. So you don't. You work. You eat. You sleep. You wait. You try not to draw attention. You try not to hope for anything. You survived the Gulag. That part is true. But outside, you're still following orders. You're still avoiding notice. You're still alone. The fences are gone. But the rest of it, the quiet, the hunger, the rules, they stay with you. No one helps you forget. No one tells you how to start over. No one says, welcome back. That's it. You made it. Through the system, the snow, the waiting, the work, the noise, the silence. Through the not knowing, the being watched, the punishments that didn't have names. Through the rules that changed depending on who was standing in front of you. Through the hunger. Through the days that didn't end and the nights that didn't start. Through the kind of survival that doesn't come with a reward. There's nothing else to explain. You lived it. That's enough. Sleep now. If you can. If not, just lie still. That's how most of it felt anyway.